Hello and welcome to another How to English video. Today I want to talk about mistakes. Mistakes are generally considered quite bad. Maybe you feel bad about making mistakes. Maybe you avoid speaking so that you won't make a mistake. But really you should see mistakes in a totally different light. Mistakes are not bad if you follow this advice. Now, mistakes really are opportunities to learn. You need to make mistakes to learn. If you don't make a mistake, you simply will not be able to learn and make progress. So, as opposed to looking at mistakes as very bad things, things that you want to avoid, which you do want to avoid you want to avoid mistakes that you know are mistakes. That's the thing. The other mistakes, let's call them experimental mistakes, really you should not try to make more, but you should definitely experiment more with English to try to find opportunities to learn new language, which will be from mistakes. Now, something that's very, very important about mistakes is mistakes are fine if you only make the mistake once. Where it becomes a problem is when you make the mistake a second time or a third, or more commonly, every day you make the same mistake. That's a real problem. Why? Because a mistake, as I said, is an opportunity to learn, and it's a fantastic opportunity to learn. You should definitely try to find as many of those opportunities as possible to try to eliminate the mistake, and then you gain more English and you're able to progress more quickly. The problem comes when you're making the same repetitive mistake. Why is that a problem? Well, let's compare mistakes to plants and trees. Let's say that the first time you make a mistake, that mistake is like a very thin stem on a small plant or a flower. Why do I say that? Well, the reason is you want to avoid making mistakes, or let's say that you want to remove mistakes that you're making. So you make a mistake the first time, maybe a teacher or a friend tells you that it's a mistake. You need to eliminate that, get rid of that mistake as quickly as possible. Now, when it's small and it's the first time you make it, it's quite easy to eliminate and get rid of through some practice and through some dedicated, focused English practice. The reason it's like a flower stem or a small plant is that, well, they're quite small, they're quite weak, they're quite fragile, they're easy to pick and remove it and throw it in the bin. Now, every time you make a mistake, every time you allow that plant to grow, the stem is going to get thicker and stronger and bigger and more difficult to remove. So when it's very small, a very small plant, like a flower, the stem, you can pick it off with your nails or even just pull it with your fingers and throw it away. It's very easy to remove. Now, as that plant gets bigger, now the plant is maybe up here. You can't do it with your hands. What do I mean by this? You need to use more effort. Maybe a tool like some scissors or something, but with your hands it's going to be very, very difficult. Now, those persistent, repetitive mistakes that you've been making for 5, 10, 20, sometimes 30 years, they're really, really difficult to remove. Why? Well, now they're like a tree. If you let that plant grow for many, many years, it becomes a tree. Now, it's not a small stem that you can pull with your fingers and throw it in the bin. No, now it's maybe a 1 meter wide trunk. How are you going to get rid of that? With a lot of effort. There's no way that you can do it with your hands. You're going to need an axe, and you're going to need to work all day cutting and chopping and sweating all day, maybe 2 weeks or something, just to get rid of that tree that now is a beast. It's very strong and it's going to require a lot of effort to get rid of. What does this mean? It means when you establish that you're making a mistake, you need to remove that mistake as soon as possible. Really, it should be your number one priority of something that you should learn today. So something that you should learn today is find out what are the most common mistakes that you know you're making. I'm sure you can find a list of 10 mistakes that you know you make regularly. Write those down. It takes 5 minutes. They'll be able to come out of your head very, very quickly because you know you make these mistakes. Take a piece of paper, a pen, 5 minutes, write down your top 10 repetitive mistakes in English. And then what I recommend is, for the next week, the only English practice that you should do is removing those mistakes. How do you remove them? Well, you need to learn and practice the corrections of those mistakes. So if you say, now of course the correct sentence is people are. English people are always on time, for example. Not people is. This is a very common mistake that Spanish speakers, for example, make. So they say people is. Now it's not, it's people are. English people are always on time. So what you need to do, you need to find the correct version, so the correction of the mistake you're making. Practice and repeat, practice and repeat. How much should you practice and repeat? Well, it depends how long you've been making a mistake. Is that mistake a small flower stem, or is that mistake now a big tree trunk? That's what you need to do. You need to establish what are your top 10 mistakes, how easy or subconsciously do you produce these mistakes without even noticing until it's too late, and then you need to decide how much work and how much practice you will need to remove that mistake. And that's all you need to do. Find out mistakes, find those mistakes that you're making, and practice them to get rid of them. And then you're not going to be making any mistakes. So the easiest way to improve your level sometimes is not really to learn more English. It's to remove typical mistakes that you're making. So imagine you're a B1 in English. You're going to be making mistakes. Now imagine you can be a B1, but with 0 mistakes in English. That should be your priority. Instead of learning and accumulating more and more English, try to get rid of that incorrect English. Get rid of all those mistakes that you're making, and then you can be a perfect B1 or a perfect B2. It's much better to be a perfect B1, a perfect B2, and a confident B1, B2 speaker than a C1 speaker that makes lots and lots of mistakes, has difficulty understanding, and other people have difficulty understanding them. So get rid of those mistakes. Don't wait for that mistake to become a big, big tree. It'll be too late by then. Okay? Find that mistake, write down your top 10 mistakes in English, and work over the next week to get rid of all of them. Next week, try to find more mistakes or try to find new things to learn in English. Take care. See you in the next video. Click to subscribe.